It might feel like the Battle Royale phenomenon Fortnite has been around forever, but the gamers have plenty of growing pains in the process of getting where it is today. You can't judge a book by its cover, but you can attract an audience with one. To stand out in a crowd, video games need to sport striking visual styles. Sometimes a game trailer shows off an aesthetic that instantly hooks viewers. Other times, a company decides to go back to the drawing board, figuratively and literally before release. Fortnite is the latter. When Epic Games initially announced Fortnite, the game sported a very different look. Instead of the pleasing, cartoonish graphics fans are familiar with, Fortnite utilized darker, more realistic aesthetics. Sure, facial features were still exaggerated, but the characters and monsters wouldn't have looked out of place in a survival horror game, because that was the initial plan. As dark as the teaser trailer was, it was actually toned down from Epic Games' original concept art. During GDC 2018, Vice President of Art at Epic Games, Pete Ellis, had a lecture on the development process of the art style in Fortnite, and he revealed some surprising early ideas. The game started with a gritty, realistic aesthetic and a color palette of various grays and browns. No exaggerated proportions or colorful costumes, just as much realism as the developers could cram into their drawings. Every aspect of this Fortnite prototype, including monster designs, was meant to deliver an oppressive, dangerous atmosphere.
When it started, it felt a little bit more like that sort of dark survival tone.
As interesting as these early concepts appear, the more realistic art style probably would have clashed with the current fun attitude of Fortnite. Epic Games created the Unreal Engine for, fittingly enough, the seminal FPS Unreal. This graphics engine and its updated versions have powered countless subsequent games, such as Epic's original Gears of War trilogy. One could argue each Epic Games title showcases the power of the Unreal Engine, but Fortnite also displays the engine's evolution. Since Epic Games started developing Fortnite after Gears of War 3, the company prototyped the game using Unreal Engine 3. According to producer Roger Collum, the original Fortnite was thrown together with pre-existing Unreal assets. The result was an aesthetic mess, but that's to be expected when you are on a short game jam type schedule. As the developers decided they wanted to flesh out Fortnite and add more to it, they realized their old engine wasn't up to the task. In order to turn Fortnite into a full-blown experience, complete with progression and mechanics that would keep players coming back for more, Epic Games recruited MMO system designers. And to support all the new features, Epic Games finally switched over to Unreal Engine 4. According to Wired, Fortnite was Epic Games' first project using the new engine. History would repeat itself with Fortnite Chapter 3. As Epic revealed via Twitter that going forward, the game would switch over to the engine's latest iteration, Unreal Engine 5. Depending on how long Fortnite lasts, players might eventually see it run on Unreal Engine 6. 9 times out of 10, a video game's title ties into a crucial theme or element. Once upon a time, Fortnite did the same, but not anymore. Not that it's a problem, mind you. When Epic Games began work on Fortnite, the company wanted to step outside its FPS comfort zone and try something different, according to Game Informer. The company held a game jam, and although Fortnite wasn't actually prototyped during that session, the kernel of an idea was formed. Not that most gamers would recognize it in that form.
What happened at Game Jam is actually kind of what led to Fortnite. And Fortnite wasn't a direct result, it wasn't one of the games in the Game Jam, but that process was kind of the fuel that caused that to become created.
The initial design idea for Fortnite envisioned a co-op hybrid tower defense shooter and survival horror title. The building mechanics that set Fortnite apart were there from the start. But Epic team members wanted to implement a more realistic system, or at least one inspired by Minecraft and Terraria. And the survival portion of Fortnite wasn't just the classic horror game trope of don't get bitten by zombies. Early concepts of Fortnite included farming systems. Many of these ideas were eventually toned down or outright removed for the release of Fortnite Save the World. What most gamers recognize as Fortnite, i.e. the Battle Royale segment, was built in a matter of months and was inspired by PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Without the latter game, Fortnite would probably still be a co-op tower defense title. Whenever a studio releases a game, they have to ask how their product will turn a profit. Do they want audiences to pay a one-time upfront cost, or would they rather let players in for free and then offer services and cosmetics at a premium? For Fortnite, the answer was all of the above. During GDC 2018, Epic Games' Ed Zobrist talked about the trials and tribulations behind the development of Fortnite. As previously stated, the mode most audiences associate with the title, the Battle Royale, was developed in 2 months, and it wasn't going to be free to play. Sort of. Initially, Epic Games wanted to release Battle Royale as an add-on that would come free with every purchase of the main co-op mode, Save the World. But several weeks before release, the company decided to turn Battle Royale into a standalone product with its own price tag of $0. Given the competitive multiplayer success, that was clearly the right call. Epic's smart last-minute decision with Fortnite Battle Royale would be the first of many. For instance, a company originally wanted to sell Save the World during early access and then convert it into a free-to-play title after launch. Epic backpedaled on that decision once the release date rolled around. Furthermore, Epic experimented with monetization in Battle Royale. Initially, the game launched with a season shop that sold items as players leveled up, but that system was eventually retired in Season 2 and replaced with a more recognizable Battle Pass. The biggest and most important character in any Battle Royale is arguably the map. Each match, players get to know its points of interest a little more. Over the course of a season, gamers memorize where the best looting and sniping spots are, and their knowledge is tested as arenas gradually shrink during matches. But like any good character, these maps need to undergo development every now and then. When Fortnite launched, the map could almost be considered a work in progress. The geometry was complete, but the map consisted of unbroken greenery with little variation. Loot Lake sat in the middle, while iconic locations such as Dusty Depot and Tomato Town didn't have names. Heck, Tomato Town wasn't even a town, because it lacked buildings until patch 1.71. As time progressed, Epic Games made even more additions to its map, such as Tilted Towers in Update 2.20. The patch also introduced biomes, even if they were essentially different shades of green until patch 5.0. The longer Epic Games spent on Fortnite, the more radically the map changed. Brand new points of interest cropped up and were subsequently demolished, and every now and then Epic turned the map on its head, figuratively and literally. Chapter 2 introduced an entirely new island, which was subsequently flooded in patch 13.0. Then Chapter 3 flipped the island over to reveal a third new map.
Deadpool, please report to command. Deadpool, please report to command.
The hottest items available in Fortnite are guest character skins. Why dress up as a pirate or undead banana when you can play as Indiana Jones or Darth Vader? Modern Fortnite gamers are spoiled for crossover choice, but back in the day, these IP meldings were as rare as they were celebrated. Originally, Fortnite was a self-contained IP. Player skins were colorful and eccentric, but they weren't connected to any other properties. That changed in 2018, when Epic Games introduced its first guest character skin. Well, more like a guest character weapon. To celebrate Avengers Infinity War, Epic implemented the Infinity Gauntlet limited time mashup, which let one lucky player find the Infinity Gauntlet and turn into Thanos, until they were eliminated and another player claimed the item. As Fortnite continued to evolve, mashups became regular occurrences. New seasons introduced permanent crossover skins, including John Wick, a Borderlands Psycho, and characters from Stranger Things and Batman. Come Chapter 2 Season 4 in 2020, the pop culture multiverse and its myriad of IP turned into the Fortnite narrative's driving force. Not only did Epic Games crank up the cameos, the company also started collaborating with Marvel and DC to create in-canon crossover comics. Like many gaming phenomena, Fortnite events started small and slowly built their presence. To test the waters, Epic's first Fortnite events only slightly shook up the status quo. The company started with Survive the Storm, a special mission type for Save the World that introduced limited-time loot llamas and a new enemy, the Shielder. Battle Royale later dipped its toes just as tentatively with a 50v50 battle mode that split players into two giant teams. As Fortnite evolved, so too did its in-game events. While Epic continued to release special-themed scenarios focused on competition, the company also started expanding the story of Fortnite. Chapter 1 Season 3 marked the beginning of this trend with the Meteor, followed by Blastoff and the Cube. Each event rang in the next season and theme, and also furthered the mystery of the Fortnite Island. Later events, such as Chapter 2 Season 2's The Device, sported higher production values and even voice acting.
What the? How are you even? Wait. Can you hear me?
But those events paled in comparison to the live concerts, which started small with a simple marshmallow mosh pit and have inflated in scope, such as when a giant holographic Travis Scott danced for audiences. An event involving Marvel's Galactus proved to be so huge that Twitch's servers became overwhelmed. Even though Epic Games developed Fortnite Battle Royale on a compressed schedule, the game launched in a mostly solid state. However, there's always room for improvement. As Fortnite got bigger and technology got better, Epic Games rolled out quality-of-life improvements that added new systems and mechanics. For instance, in 2018, Epic added a replay system that lets players save matches, clip their favorite moments, and post them on the internet. The company also eventually patched in sliding and swimming to give players new ways to travel, as well as a turbo build mode that lets players build insane fortresses by holding down a button. Not all of the post-release features were actually features though. Some, such as Prop Hunt and Party Royale, were new ways to play. Epic Games even temporarily took away the ability to build with the Zero Build event, which seems antithetical to the point of Fortnite itself. But players loved it so much that the company brought Zero Build back as a permanent mode. However, arguably the best new feature was the chance to make Fortnite history with a Boogie Down contest. Who wouldn't want their dance skills to be turned into the game's next emote? The longer a live service game sticks around, the more it needs to keep players invested. Adding new weapons is an excellent method of maintaining interest, since new firearms give players new ways to beat the competition. But then, balance issues start cropping up. When Fortnite launched, the game featured a solid roster of firearms, including assault rifles, pistols, and shotguns. Throughout the seasons, Epic Games added more weapon types, such as grenade launchers and compound bows, as well as more eccentric items like the grapple gloves. To prevent Fortnite from becoming bloated, Epic Games also removes items, or vaults them every now and then. Sometimes a weapon is vaulted because it is overpowered. Other times it is only meant to stick around for a limited time. But once an item is vaulted, it rarely resurfaces, with some exceptions. While Epic Games has added and removed countless items, the company has also spent plenty of development hours fixing what was already there. Most of these changes were for the sake of balance, such as tweaking weapon accuracy and damage fall-off. However, some alterations have been more cosmetic. For instance, what players now know as the pistol was originally called the semi-auto handgun, and the tactical shotgun was introduced as a semi-auto shotgun. As for the burst assault rifle, it was originally called the semi-auto rifle, only to be renamed for the sake of accuracy. Despite its name, the weapon didn't feature semi-auto fire.